Alright, I am back with another Cyberpunk 2077 video. Did not think I would be doing one of those before the end of the year because I did not expect any news from the game because they made it pretty clear that the roadmap they put out showed that 1.31 would be the last patch this year. We recently have gotten that double confirmed by them literally just saying we are not putting out any more content this year, and we are waiting for patch 1.5, skipping 1.4, sometime in Q1 with the launch of the next-gen versions of the game. However, Cyberpunk has been in the news quite a bit lately, and I've seen it trending almost every day on Twitter with at least a couple thousand tweets, and it's having a bit of a moment, which is interesting to see, and I've been talking about it a good amount and writing about it, and we have veered into Paul has become a CDPR apologist territory, where at least that's what people are saying about me, where I was, I've been roasting the game and all its misdeeds for a long time, and then eventually I kind of shift to actually, at this point with this improvement, you might want to give it a shot depending on your platform. And what appears to be happening now is a combination of the game being on sale, so it's 50% off on Steam, and there were a good amount of discounts on console as well, although Steam is kind of the main platform for the game. And also kind of people getting into the PC version specifically because of the Steam sale. That has resulted in a flood of positive user reviews for the game, and Cyberpunk is now, I think, 76%. I forget, it keeps going up, but it was 74, then 76% positive, and recently I think it's 85% of reviews have been positive, so it is in the very positive territory there. And that got some attention because some of the CDPR developers started tweeting about all the positive reviews and how good it made them feel. And everyone was like, wait, is Cyberpunk good now? What happened? And if you haven't been covering this for the past year like I have, it might be a little confusing. In short, what happened is kind of what happened at the beginning, where the base game was a wildly different experience on PC than it was on console. And the change here is that a year has produced a lot of fixes for both platforms, for PC and console, and now PC has kind of arrived in what could be considered pretty dang good shape. So if PC was okay before to pretty good at launch, it's now really good in some areas, and whereas if console was trash at launch, it's now playable and okay now after a year's worth of patches. And that is at least a dozen patches and hotfixes, many of which have hundreds and hundreds of bug fixes and performance improvements per patch. Very, very little has gone into actual kind of quality of life stuff with the game, and yet there have been a good number of improvements in terms of I understand why people would be logging in now, never having played Cyberpunk, booting up the Steam version on a decent PC and being wait, this is actually pretty good. Because as I've said before, so many aspects of this are really good. Some things are just not going to change. If they have not patched in oh, now the life paths are relevant, or we're not glossing over V and what's his name, Jackie's time together at the beginning and a cutscene, and we fleshed this out. They haven't added any actual content. They have changed a couple tiny quality of life things, but nothing significant. So if you had problems with kind of the base content of the game, that has not changed, but obviously a lot of the, I would say 80-90% of the issues with Cyberpunk were mostly based on just how poorly it was running on all platforms, but especially consoles. So if you're just hopping into the PC version, you could say that games journalists were tricked or whatever, but that is the version that some people were giving 9s and 10s at launch, which CDPR loves to remind people about. But at its core, you will find a game that is pretty fun to play, and on a proper PC with all these fixes, pretty good looking. The ray tracing stuff that you can put on now is actually kind of fantastic. I think they've done a great job with that stuff, and in the most recent patch, even 1.31, they did a reflective surfaces patch to make kind of wet surfaces and reflective surfaces look even better. Probably the best I've seen the game look. And then fundamentally, there is still kind of the core idea that a lot of people like the story of this game and the characters, myself included. I have always had a kind of bug in my bonnet about Johnny. I don't like Johnny. I don't really like the central Johnny Chip storyline, but I think there is enough just in this world. This is a very interesting, fascinating world in terms of its lore, its characters. I think all the side characters are incredibly interesting. Judy, Panam, River, and then like even some of the minor ones like Meredith and stuff, and Rogue. Like this created a very interesting kind of memorable cast of characters, and I really like V herself too, especially the female voice actress, who I think is one of the most compelling first person voice actors I've kind of seen in this genre, which doesn't happen very often because you don't really, I don't know, feel very much for your own character if they have their own voice because you never see them. But I think they do a good job at that here. So people are logging in and discovering that there are many elements of this game that are very fun, and if they are not running into game-breaking bugs or horrible performance issues and are kind of exploring what is a very good-looking cyberpunk world, I can understand why those reviews are heavily skewing positive. I can understand why Cyberpunk was the best-selling game on Steam for a short while when that sale's going on. I think it's still going on. And I think it was the third best-selling game of the week this week, which, I mean, for a game that's a year old, like I know there was a 50% off sale, but a game that old with that reputation, that's pretty impressive. Like, I'm not going to lie, that is genuinely impressive. And I think we all forget that Cyberpunk did sell incredibly well at launch, right around before everyone kind of figured out it was not ready to be released. It sold 13 million copies. It made more for CDPR in a couple weeks than The Witcher 3 made in a couple years. So they, what they're doing now is like they are kind of banking on the fact that this will become a turnaround story. And I don't think we have gotten our No Man's Sky moment here yet, because like at this point in No Man's Sky's life cycle, they had already released a couple actual expansions with content. I think they did like the base expansion, the vehicle expansion, where Cyberpunk has still released literally nothing new except 2 jackets, a car, and a much worse look for Johnny. That has been the free DLC they've released. But we know they are planning a very large DLC, probably a pair of DLCs in 2022. At least one will be in 2022. Plus the next-gen launch of the game where, yes, that has been stupidly delayed for a very long time. And yet, if that can capture the performance and the visuals that we're seeing in the PC version to any extent, I think that is going to be kind of another eye-opening moment for people who... this is why I keep telling people to buy the game at like $10 on PS4, because you will get a free upgrade to the next-gen version. And that is going to be pretty transformative, I think, given how long that they have been taking on it and the lessons they have probably learned from initial launch. Don't get me wrong. As much as it sounds like I'm, hyping CDPR up, I remain very annoyed and almost like angry with how this played out at launch. I think I am technically not supposed to say this in print without getting comment from them, but like, I think CDPR just lied about a lot of things. They lied about last gen performance for old consoles. They said it was surprisingly good, and then they refused to give us, the press, any console codes ahead of launch, and they gave us the purposefully much better version, the version they knew was much better on PC to review. I don't think I actually gave it a number score. I was just like playing it, and I was going to wait to see kind of how it launched, but a lot of people did review that version, and it was misleading about the overall quality of the game. I also don't believe them when they say that they just missed the bugs that people were seeing like during QA, which is what they said during their like quote apology video. I don't know how that's possible when you have a year full of patches that have 3,000, 4,000 bug fixes and performance improvements. I can't see how that's possible, how you would play the game and not experience that kind of thing, or if you did, why you would launch it in that state. And the whole Sony takes them off the store thing was, I don't know. I feel like that's more Sony being a little petulant than like CDPR did something so outrageously terrible it deserved it. But I think you can make both arguments there. And that was mostly a dispute about refund policy, not the quality of the game, because there are, of course, plenty of games that have launched with very serious technical issues that have been kept on stores like that. So I don't know if that's the best point of comparison. And I just, they promised a lot of things or hinted at a lot of features in the game that just were not there. And the game definitely felt unfinished at launch, not just from a technical perspective, but like you can tell a lot of stuff was just cuts and they rushed it out at least a year too early. I know it had already been delayed a long time at that point, but that was clearly the wrong decision for executives. Now, what's happening right now with all these kind of positive reviews and the sales and stuff, like it makes me wonder what would have happened if they had waited an entire year to do it. Like, granted, Nothing has changed with the core of the game, so like the content issues still would have been there, and yet it is much, much more playable and like less of a meme on last gen consoles than it was at launch. Like there have been many performance improvements there. And then on PC, it genuinely runs really well most of the time and looks fantastic with on the highest settings with a great machine. And like I think the narrative would have been a lot different if that had happened. Like we had this conversation a lot. Like I used to think about Mass Effect Andromeda, like if they had just, they had a patch like 3 months after launch that fixed everyone's faces, and like, how much better would have that game have been received if it wasn't a meme for like the first 3 months of its life. Like, I guess hindsight's 2020, but I do see what they're doing here in terms of like trying to kind of shape this into something that's a long-term project that kind of yields actual returns for them. Because of that, that is why I kind of recommend picking up the game when it's at these very low prices, because I think it is going to, on PC especially, I think the whole core game is worth playing right now. On console, I would pick it up, and if you have a next-gen console, I would absolutely wait until the next-gen version comes out for your first experience with it. If you have a last-gen console, I still probably wouldn't recommend the game. I just don't think you are going to have a very good experience then, and I might wait until you are able to play it on PC or next-gen, because I think it will, even now, it will color your color your vision of it in a bad way, because it is not, like, that is not how you should experience the game. This is kind of opposed to, say, GTA, the trilogy remastered, where that is a remaster of like a 15-year-old game or whatever it is, and it launched on all platforms, and somehow like GTA 3 is running worse on PS5 than like GTA 4 was running on like PS3, or GTA 5 was running on PS3. Like that port doesn't even make sense, and that is like something core to that remaster that is just broken across all levels. Whereas Cyberpunk was like, okay, here's like a PC version that is like 85% of what it's supposed to be, and here's a console version that is like 20% of what it's supposed to be, and this yawning gap in the middle. And like my first experience was on Xbox Series X playing the upconverted Xbox One X version, and like I didn't have a ton of like horrific, performance issues or game-breaking bugs, but it also like didn't look that great, like didn't play amazingly, like, and then switching to PC, it was like, oh, okay, I get it. Like this is how this game is supposed to be. That makes a lot more sense to me. So these days, like, I'm just sort of waiting for an actual big content release. I have a feeling that we will get something like New Game Plus launching when the next gen version hits, because obviously that would be a great moment to kind of dive back into your console version and do a replay if you wanted to. I'm hoping for some substantive free DLC that has missions, and then of course I'm waiting for the larger expansion and hoping that is like Hearts of Stone territory and like something that is a significant, very engaging new addition to the game. Obviously, it is still hard to have tons and tons of faith in CDPR, because I never think they have like properly kind of reconciled for what they pulled with the Cyberpunk launch, and I don't think they should be let off the hook for that. But if we are just being objective, like, yes, I can say that I certainly think Cyberpunk 2077 is a very fun, interesting, engaging game to play on PC for the most part, even with its, some of its shortcomings. And it is certainly in better shape than it was a year ago, and PC is in much better shape than console, and always has been. And we can talk about, the past endlessly, and I do think CDPR needs to be held accountable, but, in some ways, we're seeing free upgrades to the next-gen version. I don't imagine the DLC will be free, but I don't know. We'll see what happens when that rolls around, if they're going to do it as like a quote apology. But my guess is no. My guess is they want their shares to go up after dropping 60% after the disastrous launch here. So I am very curious to see where the future of this game goes. Like, something about this game has just dug its way inside my brain and will not get out. As you can see, I keep writing about it. Even a year later, I've probably written more Cyberpunk articles than anyone else on the internet, like similar to me, maybe not at quite the level I do Destiny, but I have been engaged with this game as much as I can be, or at least news surrounding this game, for a very long time now. And like every so often, like I say on Twitter, like I just log in, buy some clothes, take some screenshots, and like, just post them because I think it's fun. Like it's goofy, but like I just really like the world. I like the character. I like making cool scenes and stuff. And I'm desperate for like just a reset all gangs button so I can just go and like actually fight people again, because now it's just random cops standing on street corners and stuff, and there's nothing to do. But I am going to, keep tracking all this, and it's interesting to see it having a moment right now. But I think we might be seeing kind of an even bigger one when all this stuff rolls around in Q1. And I think we're going to be hearing about this game for a very long time. I think they're going to do 2 DLCs. I think they are going to try and do something with multiplayer here. So the past year has been rough. It has gotten less rough as time's gone on with all the patches, but I know a lot of people have ignored them, which is why people kind of booting the game up now are suddenly like, whoa, like, why is this, this is much better than anyone told me it was. And it's just interesting to see how the narrative is starting to change, and that may keep happening depending on what comes next. So anyway, I will probably not talk about this very much more until the new year. I'll probably squeeze some articles out of it, but I don't imagine any more videos, and we will see if Q1 means January 2nd or the end of March or something. So we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you guys soon.